Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Procurement.
The only show you need to master the art of procurement.
Let's go. What I like about that is we clearly had the same sort of synergy, like the Crouches, just finished each other's
Sandwiches.
I knew you were going to say that. Beautiful. How are you doing anyway? So, actually, let me introduce you first. So, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us. As always, we are in the studio virtual. And what?
No, hold on. Finish your sentence.
Sorry, he just disrupted my whole flow by putting his hand up. What a weirdo. So with me is Luke 10, who is the SIPS understudy student training in arms of the show. And I am his Yoda, if you like. I'm Luke 1, hostess with the mostess. And I think between us, you get quite a good coverage of what's going on in the world of SIPS, procurement, supply, and that's it, really. Anyway, how you doing, mate? You all right?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm on the verge of being ill, and I've got to the stage where my voice is a little bit deeper. So, yeah, if that comes across.
Last time that happened, we got a donation. So that was when we got that buy me a coffee donation. I think I couldn't work out if it was to help you get better or if it was they wanted more content with that voice.
Yeah. Well, if you want to tell us again, then put a comment next to it. But you got to send money first.
How do you do that though?
You click on the link in the description of the episode. Anyway,
it's not about money grabbing, it's about getting in touch with us because we love listeners who drop us messages. We've had a few in recent episodes. Some of them are giving shit and we love that. Some of them are asking for advice 3 days before an exam and then expecting us to release an episode within 2 days and then bail them out.
Yeah.
So that's the caliber of listener we've got, really. Just get in touch, really. So 2lukes1sip@gmail.com. That's 2lukes1sip, and that's CIP@gmail.com. Someone did say that we spelled SIP wrong, and I had to kind of point out that actually it's not SIPs because you haven't earned the S, so it can't be plural. It's like a play on words, but I guess you only really get it if you're a procurement geek. And
or you just have a weird mind like you do.
Do I have a weird mind? I don't know whether the two Lukes is quite cool, isn't it? And how often you get two people with the same name doing a podcast, and then also the fact we've got one sip between us.
Yeah,
it's kind of got a nice ring to it. 2 Lukes, 1 sip.
Yeah, it's kind of reminds me of something that I can't really remember. Anyway,
and then we've got an Instagram, right?
We do, which is let's_talk_procurement, I think. And we also have a text us button, so you can just slide into our DMs via text, and if it's good enough, it'll be featured on the website. And the final way you can show us your support is by giving us a 5-star review on the platform of your choice.
Or,
speaking of 5-star reviews, sorry to interrupt there. I recently asked Copilot to do a review of us. It's quite a long review, and here is what it said. Review. Let's Talk Procurement podcast. Let's Talk Procurement is a refreshing and entertaining take on a field that's often seen as dry or overly technical. Hosted by the dynamic duo Luke 1 and Luke 10, the podcast blends humour, insight and real-world relevance to make procurement not only understandable but genuinely enjoyable. What makes it stand out? Engaging hosts? And I don't know if I agree with this bit. It says, Luke 1 brings sharp procurement expertise while Luke 10 adds a dose of humour and relatability.
I like that.
Educational value. Whether you're studying for SIPs or working in supply chain management, the podcast offers practical tips, case studies and breakdown of complex concepts. real-world stories, bite-sized and accessible, and apparently it's best for procurement professionals, SIP students, business and supply chain enthusiasts, and anyone who enjoys learning with a laugh.
Yes, I mean, that is a big community, isn't it? The supply chain enthusiasts.
Yeah, all 7 of you.
I'm glad we're at the heart of that. I mean, he obviously hasn't listened to the pod. I think what he's done is just taken our podcast description and turned that into a review style analysis. So I wrote I wrote our kind of summary of the pod and kind of blew my own trumpet and gave you very little credit.
That's really you?
So today's episode is an interesting one. I was actually inspired by our listener who got in touch with us a few weeks back. So his name was Tariff, and that takes us nicely on to today's subject, which is tariffs.
That took me a second.
See how we got the link. So thank you, Tariff, for your inspiration, and hope you're doing well. So I noticed that tariffs is still a very hot topic. So I thought, start the clock, and we'll do a quick overview of what they are. I mean, that will literally be about 30 seconds, and then talk about how that impacts us as procurement professionals, and then whether they're a good thing, a bad thing, or what we can do about it.
So, tariffs is a hot topic because of a guy called Donald, right? That's why it's coming up. I'm sure if you looked at Google search and just said, how often has the word tariff come up in the last 20 years, it's probably massively spiked in the last few months since the election.
But for being imposed, yes, there has been instances where tariffs have been reduced or removed that have caused some passion amongst supply chain professionals. But yeah, this was unprecedented. I think it was just Donny T got into power and wanted to do something that made a statement. So, what is a tariff, my friend?
I'd say it's a tax imposed by a government on imported goods.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And is it always by the government?
I don't know. My AI research didn't go that far.
Most often, yes, but you do get other bodies like trade unions and things like that actually have kind of a bit of a say on it. Like random customs territories as well. Are they percentage values? Typically, yes.
But they could be like whatever the value. If you import a box of cigarette, or if you import a cigarette, it'll cost five extra. Whereas if you import 20,000 cigs, it's still 5.
Yeah, no, typically it's a percentage as opposed to just a transactional thing, purely because one of the main designs of it is to get revenue. As with most taxes, it's basically how can we get more money as a country. And the reason that it's quite a good one from the country that's putting them in's perspective is that it's taking money from companies that are bringing things in. So
and not the country's own companies.
Exactly that, yeah. So it's what you call protectionism. I don't know if you've heard of protectionism, but protectionism is effectively when governments, economists, anyone else in a bit of power tries to take a defensive stance for their own economy and tries to protect it and shield it from basically foreign trade and everything else. So that could be subsidising their domestic produce. It could be taxing imports. It could be banning imports completely. But it's basically doing what you can to help your internal economy grow. One key thing to note as a SIP student is that tariffs aren't always just on imports. So some weirdos can put tariffs on exports out of their own country as well.
Why would they do that?
couple of reasons. One is perhaps there's a shortage of product in their country, so they want to retain the actual product in the country. And then the other one is that they just don't want to export it. So, it might be that we produce cocaine, and we don't want to export cocaine because it's not legal in every country. I don't know why cocaine thing came to my head. I was thinking of kind of your recent holiday destinations and some of the produce there, but yeah. So typically it's more around imports. It's more of an economic strategy to raise revenue, and to try and fight the ongoing battle with cheaper imports, really.
So a phrase that gets bandied about quite a lot, especially recently, is a trade war. What's a trade war? Is that when, say, one country A puts a high tariff on imported goods from country B, and then country B goes, all right, I'll put an even higher tariff on you than country A?
Yeah, exactly. Or we'll charge you more, and we'll increase our price of selling to you, and you'll end up effectively copying your own tariff yourself. So the concept of an import tax is okay. It sounds great, doesn't it? Like, we'll just ask anyone who wants to sell to our country that they just pay a tax on top of it. Fantastic. But the problem is if you drastically tweak it, or if you change it, or if you just put one in without warning, it's going to upset your trade relationships with that country. It's going to upset your political relationships with that country. Effectively, you're kind of saying, well, we want to take more money from you, America, China, whoever it is that you're imposing it on. You can impose it on specific countries. You can impose it on specific types of goods and services, and you can be quite quite flexible with how you do it and what you do with it. It's just that if, like Donny T may or may not have done, you decide to just tax China, obviously the Chinese will then be like, hold on, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you taxing us and you're not taxing the UK, or you're not taxing Wales for the same thing? So it swings and roundabouts, and it's something that probably pisses off people, and usually results in retaliation if it's a percentage that's ridiculous. So if it's like a 0.5% or 1%, and it's kind of done with months of discussion, you probably go, yeah, I don't mind that. But if it's, oh, hello, I'm just going to put 5% on everything that you're now trying to sell us that you have to give back to us, and it's only for your country, or it's only for a handful of countries, it kind of feels a bit personal.
Yeah. And that's when you get into the politics side of it, about negotiation and things that kind of aren't in procurement's control. So how do you then manage that as a procurement professional?
Well, the first thing I would say is it should be a factor of your STEEPLE analysis whenever you're doing your market analysis, or kind of deciding whether to bring a product in, not bring a product in, make versus buy, all of that good stuff. So that's kind of the geopolitical side of STEEPLE, if you like. And you can't necessarily plan for Donny T coming in and just doing that randomly, but there are things that you can do. But before I answer your question, what do you think a spike in tariffs, like general tariff increasing, does to the general mood amongst procurement professionals? And
I would say elevated stress.
Okay, well, we do live in a stress-free world, so a little bit of stress can't hurt, right?
Yeah, exactly. We sit in our ivory towers, just making decisions, not considering anyone else.
Yeah.
So, if someone says, oh, and only caring about price as well, that's another myth. People think we only care about price, but in this instance, if you're suddenly going to pay 5-10+% more for the same thing that you were buying, you're getting the same output, but you're having to pay 5 or 10% more for it. That does matter.
Yeah. And what it does is it signals uncertainty. It makes people second guess their contracts. Obviously, they're going to have. We've got our own supply chain, and it's what makes up that supply chain. In order to make our product, are we buying in a lot of things from Japan, China, that side of the world that's now subject to tariffs? Are they going to charge us more money? How are we then going to pass that on to our customers, or are we unable to pass that on to our customers? Just kind of, you're right, stress basically, because it's something we didn't see coming. It's sort of out of our control, and we've just got to live with it to an extent.
Yeah.
Now, if you were a small firm and you're a procurement guy in a small firm, which I think is quite rare, but if you any of you listeners happen to be in an SME and a procurement manager, I'd love to know, because quite often it gets left on the back burner until the companies are quite sizable. But if you were in a small company, you would actually be potentially relatively happy with your country putting import tariffs on, because you're a domestic supplier and you can capitalize on it. Hopefully see an increase in demand. So
as long as that's the way your client base is structured.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a weird one, because it's a bit like increasing the minimum wage, where that always feels like a good thing straight up front, but then the more you think about it, the more questionable it can be. So let's say you increase the minimum wage from £10 to £15 an hour. Well, that's great for the people who retain their jobs, but the company's still got a certain budget, so that means they're going to have to let some people go to make sure they can still live within their means. So you go, well, what was a good intending policy is now created unemployment. And it's similar with the tariffs, in that you go for the positive impact, but then you hurt your relations with another country, your supply chain gets messed up. And it just gets complicated quite quickly, to be honest.
Who would be a politician, eh?
Well, that's the thing. If it pays well, I wouldn't mind.
You're doing it just for the money.
Aren't we all?
I do procurement for the fun.
Yeah, you're one of the 7 supply chain enthusiasts. Yeah, I mean, okay, so inevitably, us as procurement people would be facing increased supplier costs across our supply chain as a result of this, right? So let's broadly take that as an assumption that anyone in a company right now will be facing potential increase in costs due to newly imposed global tariffs. Fine. What are the sort of things that you would think about as ways to help us address our concerns and our stress? How would you relieve yourself from the stresses of tariffs?
Firstly, quit the job.
Yep.
That could work. That could be a good strategy. Spend all your time at home instead.
Would you do some crabbing, or would you run?
What's crabbing?
Well, you told me about crabbing. That for you listeners who don't know, Luke 10 is a passionate referee in his spare time, but he's not quite good enough to always be the ref. So you become the assistant to the referee, which we all know is
the regional referee.
Yeah, that's it. So which we all know is the lino, right? So he gets a flag, and I used to think it was called sidestepping, but Luke 10 recently told me it's called crabbing. The little run up and down they do down the side of the pitch, but they're still facing inwards. That's called crabbing. So
that's the professional language. That's the technical language. If anyone wants to sound like a boss when they talk to referees.
So you would run away or crab away from your problems with the tariffs?
Yeah, I'd probably crab away to get a better view of what's going on. Also, if I wasn't going to do that, I would consider onshoring or nearshoring.
Ooh, here we go.
So onshoring is choosing suppliers that are from the same country as you, I guess it's easier for us to understand in the UK because we have a shore, right, all around every part of our country.
Island, yeah.
Yeah. But if you were a landlocked country, can you name a landlocked country?
Yes. Do you want me to name it?
Yeah.
Austria.
I'll accept that. I will accept that. If you're not a landlocked country, I assume it's still called onshoring. I don't know. I do know an Austrian. I'll have to ask them.
Inboarding. That sounds a bit weird. Within your
sounds
borders.
like some sort of tortured method. Inboarding.
Yeah, or an insult. You filthy inboard.
Yeah. So that's what that is. Or you have nearshoring, which is say you currently have services provided by a company in India or China, and you live in the UK, or your company's in the UK. Could you nearshore it to somewhere in Europe?
Yes. Now, you can, and the reason is that you get, in theory, from nearshore, you don't get as cheaper rates and things like that, but you get the benefit of similar levels of quality understanding and kind of, not competence is probably the wrong word, but like a similar level of
increased control over it, right?
Yeah, control. And it's just a bit trickier now because we left the EU. So from a UK perspective, because we left the EU, we don't have the benefits of kind of that free trade agreement between all the countries. So we'll probably end up having to look at like Scotland or Wales, something a little less exciting than the wonders of Greece and Portugal and all that good stuff. So nearshoring is basically just somewhere relatively close by, so you can potentially monitor the risk a bit better. Conduct a site visit because they're a bit closer. There is also a term, I don't know if you've heard of it, friendshoring.
No.
Where it's similar to nearshoring, but it's friendshoring in the sense that it's countries that your country is effectively allied with or has some sort of pact to support each other. So UK and US have always been relatively close in terms of the trade and the way they work, so you could consider them a friendshoring option. Maybe less so now they've got Donny T at the helm, but that's a kind of example of the term friendshoring.
I see that. Yeah.
So that's a great option, I think. What else would you do or consider doing to counter tariffs? And you can do things now, I think. You can do things kind of in the near term. So I would suggest some of the strategies. So things like diversifying your supplier base. If you happen to just have one supplier and they're in a country that's going to be impacted by this, it makes sense to have contingency plans, other options, backups. And in a very go on.
Sorry, you go. No, you crossed the road first.
In a very similar vein, to having contingency with the suppliers, you probably would also look to have contingency with your stock. So I know just-in-time procurement is all about, how fast can we get stock turned around? We don't want stuff getting dusty on the warehouse. But when you've got times of uncertainty, you probably do want spares, repairs, and things you've already purchased at X amount of pounds that it is yours basically.
Shout out to our KFC FCK up and also Suez Canal episode where we reference that.
Yeah.
I have a question. Could you, let's say you are in the US and you're buying from China, which has got a high tariff put on it, could you then have some sort of arrangement with a company in, I don't know, what has low tariffs? I think the UK has relatively low tariffs from America. Could then you get a company to send the goods from China to the UK, then buy it from the UK into the US at a lower tariff rate, if that made financial sense, or is that
So
illegal?
you're talking about like economic triage, effectively.
Basically, moving the goods around different countries in order to evade or reduce the tariffs.
Actually, yes, you can do that. The caveat I would say is that if you have to go to someone in another country to procure the goods for you, they're going to be chucking on risk contingency and margin. So actually, you'll end up probably being worse off across the whole thing, and also having lead times of whatever to get a product shipped from China to the UK back to the US.
So it could work in certain circumstances, but
yeah,
it might not overall in every one.
There are some rare cases where you can do it with currency. So currency trading, you can be better off by buying different currencies. But that's not my area of expertise. So if you're interested in that, don't hang around. The only other kind of strategy for kind of mitigating, I guess, forecast increasing costs due to tariffs or any other thing, to be honest, is extending your current contracts with suppliers. So if you can give suppliers, an extension of 2 or 3 years, they might be willing to just hold the price for you, or to give you a 2 or 3% increase, and then they'll swallow up anything else. So that kind of goes into supplier relationship management and everything else. But
however, that does place a lot of risk on them, doesn't it? If they're fronting the cost.
It does, but equally, they've got the security of getting a 2-3 year contract. So it swings and roundabouts, right? Because the tariff might be gone after 6 months, if that's what the direct cause of the price increase is.
Yeah, okay. I also had a question which you kind of touched on earlier. There's been some debate about whether putting a tariff on a country would cause the cost to the consumer to go up or not. Can you settle the debate all the economists have failed to do, and tell us whether it does or doesn't, or sometimes does, sometimes doesn't, make the end price to the end consumer go up?
I think without a doubt it does. Do you want an explanation, or is that clear?
I do.
So, from working with suppliers, I don't think I've met a single supplier that doesn't grab the opportunity to increase prices. So, rising costs of living, rising costs of energy, rising costs of fuel, like whatever, well, that is energy, but whatever it is.
Minimum wage increase?
Minimum, it does, yeah. It doesn't take long for suppliers to knock on your door and say, "Oh, got to put the prices up, got to put the prices up," and eventually you start at the back where you've got raw extraction of materials. The costs go up for them, then they push their costs up, and you keep following the supply chain up until you get to the shops that you and I go into to buy our products. They've had increased costs from their suppliers. So inevitably, there will be a cost that goes up.
If the cost of raw aluminium goes up, the
Yeah.
cost that people buy that at goes up. So the cost that it takes to make the lid flicking widgets on the Coke cans goes up. Therefore,
Yep.
the cost of Coke goes up, and therefore, I don't get my caffeine fix, or have to pay more for it.
You pay more for it, right? It's a bit like the sugar tax that was put in the UK. Was like, effectively that put the price of sugary drinks up, right? But then they introduced sugar-free versions, a lot of these companies, which were cheaper. But now if you go into a shop, the sugar-free ones are still just as expensive, or they're still more than what they should be, in my humble opinion. And what you get is you just get all of these suppliers looking for any excuse, even how loose it is, how loosely it kind of relates to their company, to put prices up. And the end consumers' salaries are definitely not increasing at the same rate on average. So if you take the average, obviously there's a few people that will be moving and getting extraordinary increases, but over time, typically your wage inflation does not match general price increases anyway. So yes, you end up worse off, but I think that's just the way it is, which is kind of shit. But there's nothing that Joe Blogs or whatever can do about it from a day-to-day perspective, other than diversify themselves and try and increase their earnings.
So are you saying end capitalism?
That's a bit deep, isn't it? No, not really. I don't really care about that system. I think if people want to make it, they can make it, right? But I just, I mean, specifically to your question, tariffs or whatever, there will always be end customers that are worse off. You know, it might not be the people in the country that impose a tariff. It might be the people in the country that were in the factories producing the stuff that's now facing a tariff, so they can't sell as much. Or it might be someone completely different because, you know, they're now worse off, and it's just an ongoing, like, it's probably like a set of scales where it all balances out to some extent, but usually with all the profits going to the people who invest or own the businesses, and then the end consumers missing out, really. Hopefully that settles it.
That does. It makes sense. I did, to round off, I did ask AI for a question. You know, I asked it to do a review of our podcast. And yes. I said, if we're doing a episode on tariffs, what question would Luke 10, me, ask you, Luke 1? And it said...
tariff.
It said, yeah, what's procurement? No, it said, if tariffs were a character in a procurement soap opera, would they be the villain, the misunderstood genius, or the comic relief? Do you know how to answer that one?
Wow, was not expecting that.
It's got me pretty nailed on there, I think.
It? Oh, because I would. This is getting a bit philosophical, but every villain is somebody's hero.
Wow.
So take that as you will.
Do you know that's a perfect answer?
Thank you.
That is a perfect answer. Shall we end there?
Oh, that's a lovely spot to end it, isn't it?
And I'm going to leave you with this parting thought. Life is short, but it's the longest thing that you'll ever do. See you later.
See you later.
So, just inspirational bits at the end there.